All right, joining us now for reaction is the aforementioned Carter Page, a former Trump campaign advisor whom the FBI surveilled, as well as Michael Caputo, a former Trump campaign aide who has been interviewed by special counsel Robert Mueller's team. Gentlemen, it's great to have you both on tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Carter, let's start with you. You had a lot of contact with this informant, whatever we want to call him, informant, spy, mole. And I want to read one of the emails that he sent to you that was released by, I think it was Daily Caller, got this initially. Dear Carter, I thought I'd write as the summer wears on to ask how you are and what your plans are at this point. It seems attention has shifted a bit from the collusion investigation to the contempt, of course he misspelled it, within the White House, and how or if Mr. Scaramucci will be accommodated there. I must assume this gives you some relief. We're here in Virginia, et cetera, et cetera. Be in touch when you have the time. Would be great to catch up. We're not mentioning the informant's name, but Carter, when did you first meet this informant that we now know as an informant? And just briefly tell us about that exchange.
Well, again, similar to you in terms of being cautious about identity, I have also, I never knew anything about the person I was speaking with, who's a university professor at Cambridge in the UK at the time. I was invited to participate in a conference in July of 2016, and everything seemed totally normal. And frankly, I've been falsely accused myself, and we'll see what happens in terms of, as further details come out. But based on everything I've seen thus far, we still don't have any information. So there's been a lot of
we know he was paid $1 million over 5 years, pretty good money, as a consultant or researcher. But you're right. Well, we shall see. But question, Carter, before we go on to Michael. Who started the conversation? How did the date begin? Sorry, but did he approach you? Did he mention Russia collusion first? How did it go down?
We had it was a multi-day conference, and there were scholars and people from government, both from the United Kingdom.
I know, but stay focused with me, Carter.
Yeah.
Did he approach you first? Did you approach him? How did you first start speaking?
I don't even recall. We spent a couple days together, and there
a couple days together.
Well, yeah, it was a long event over several days, and at
right. But there were a lot of
scholars.
What I'm saying is there were a lot of scholars there, and you have to know the process of grooming someone. When someone is an informant, they don't just go up to someone and say, "Hey, I want to plant information on you or find out what you have." You try to win someone's trust over. That's how it goes.
I never felt groomed. So if he's good at doing that, then perhaps that's part of the game.
But you don't know. Stand here, right? You don't know who mentioned the Russia collusion issue first.
I can't even remember. I think Russia was in the news, and I think a lot of politics sort of revolves around various news events, and so these various stories came up. Again, we stayed in touch for over a year, and while
looking
all
back
of this
on it,
FISA
Carter,
abuse
but looking
was
back, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're limited time. Looking back on it, does anything seem odd, or just how you know something now, you're like, oh, maybe that was a little odd, or any other contacts you had with any other people that seem now, in retrospect, given what we know now, odd, out of the ordinary, or maybe in some way improper?
Well, I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt, and we'll see. Maybe this individual who we're talking about might have been a little bit nicer than I might otherwise have expected. Although, we were talking about all of the abuses that were happening with this dodgy dossier, which was first debuted in September 2016. As a way of damaging the Trump campaign and basically destroying myself. And so, and he always seemed very sympathetic about that. So, again, we'll see. I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. People that know him in Washington, in senior circles that I've spoken with afterwards, say, he seemed like a pretty decent guy. So I give
That would be the perfect. That would be the perfect person to use for. Maybe I'm just cynical, been around Washington too long. Carter, if only they gave you the benefit of the doubt, like you're giving other people the benefit of the doubt. Michael, let's go to you. You've been through the meat grinder at the Mueller investigation. He has the legal eagles, all these really highly skilled interviewers, prosecutors on his side. Many of them, not all of them, but many of them, I believe, have a built-in animus against Donald Trump. You are very angry that you've been dragged into this as a former associate of Roger Stone. You also did some work for the Trump campaign. Tell us what you think. You just heard what Carter said about this, reported informant for the FBI.
Well, I think Carter's been through more of a meat grinder than I have, and he's handled it as a gentleman. In fact, when I first heard about this stuff, I think in 2016, 2017, about Carter, I wasn't very kind in my criticism, and I think it looks like they were really abusing Carter. I think they were really treating him poorly, and I think a lot of us owe Carter an apology because we didn't wait to hear the truth at the end, and now we're finding out that his country was really failing him for months and months and even years. I'm angry. I'm surprised that Carter's not. He's a greater man than I think. But I'll tell you, this is really sick and twisted stuff. And like Carter said, this gentleman who shall not be named has a reputation of being very pro-America, very patriotic. And if, in fact, he was brought into this under false circumstances or false pretenses as well, he'd be the kind of guy that a deep state would target.
Yeah. Well, the dossier was the basis for getting this FISA warrant. I don't care what these people say. It was all a big lie. Without this dossier, Carter Page would not have been surveilled in the fall of 2016. That would not have happened. That's why they were running to that Russian oligarch, Oleg Deripaska, to try to get him involved. And he's like, I don't even like Paul Manafort. This is ridiculous. So they were doing everything they could. They were working the Page angle. They probably were working this informant angle. And they brought you in, Michael, which we'll get to in a moment. But I want to play for you what Sally Yates, the acting attorney general at the very beginning of the Trump administration, she's the one partly responsible for interviewing Michael Flynn at the beginning, what she said today on Morning Joe. Let's watch.
I think what we're seeing here is the president has just taken his all-out assault on the rule of law to a new level. Mm-hmm. And this time he is ordering up an investigation of the investigators who are examining his own campaign. That's really shocking. Rod Rosenstein is trying to strike a balance here between diffusing this situation, but also protecting the rule of law and the institutional integrity of the department.
Carter Page, as I pointed out in the opening angle, the government under the Obama administration had surveilled people and lied about it. And whether it was Clapper, whether it was the FBI under Holder surveilling journalists, they have a history of having a problem telling the truth on surveillance. So for Sally Yates to run out there and say, oh, well, this Donald Trump's attacking the rule of law, come on, your reaction.
Well, just going to Michael's point about, things they did to me, President Trump during the campaign would often say, this is not about me, this is about us. And I think of all of the terrible things that happened to so many people like Michael, like, some of the other people who were involved allegedly with this informant. I actually, spoke very positively. I got a positive impression about this informant, and a couple of the people I mentioned him to in the campaign, I was a pretty positive endorsement. So I hope and pray that, all these allegations turn out to be false. And part of why I'm somewhat open about my communications with him is that it'll lead to some truth finally from the Department of Justice. I've been asking for DOJ to own up to these things, and it's funny, the defamation suit I have against a top media organization and DOJ. The media organization is actually much more honest than the false pleadings by the DOJ so far.
Right.
So hopefully they clean up.
We got to play this James Clapper for Michael. He's basically just justifying the use of any type of informant here. Let's watch.
The focus here, and as it was with the intelligence community, is not on the campaign per se, but what the Russians were doing to try to instantiate themselves in the campaign or to influence or leverage it. So if there was someone that was observing that sort of thing, well, that's a good thing because the Russians pose a threat to the very basis of our political system.
Michael, so you see a pattern here? Former Obama administration officials justifying spying on, surveilling, whatever you want to call it, putting a mole in on an opposing campaign and a hotly contested election year. Final thoughts.
I'll tell you, you've spent time in Russia. Carter and I both have. In Russia, they call this Siloviki, the national security leadership that secretly spies on the entire citizenry of Russia. And here we are in the United States with our own Siloviki underneath President Obama. Let me tell you something that I know for a fact. This informant, this person that they tried to plan into the campaign and even into the administration, if you believe Axios, he's not the only person that came at the campaign. And the FBI is not the only Obama agency that came at the campaign. I know because they came at me. And I'm looking for clearance from my attorney to reveal this to the public. This is just the beginning. And I'll tell you, when we finally find out the truth about this, Director Clapper and the rest of them are going to be wearing some orange suits.
Michael Caputo and Carter Page, I hope we get to the bottom of this a lot sooner than a lot of people are predicting, because the American people deserve to know who is behind this, who authorized it, and how high up the ladder it went. Thank you both for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Laura.
All right.